Welcome to Your Next Mission, the podcast where we focus on veterans transitioning out of the military and back into civilian life. Each month, we're going to talk with real veterans and hear stories about their struggles, their triumphs, and how they found their next mission. Here are your hosts, Kajal Shelat and Maurice Wilson.
Welcome to the first episode of Your Next Mission podcast. I'm your host, Kajal Shelat, and I'm the Director of Business Development from CCS Learning Academy, a division of CCS Global Tech. We are an IT consulting firm focusing on software development, talent augmentation, and IT training. I've been in the higher education and IT industry for the last 12 years, and I've worked very closely with veterans, helping them find their next career path and or advance their career path in the technology sector. Nearly 2/3 of new veterans say they face difficulty while transitioning into civilian life. In this podcast, it is all about helping veterans find their identity after service. And we want to offer some guidance and support on really how to achieve that. So today I'm here with Maurice Wilson, a retired Navy Master Chief Petty Officer with 25 years of service. Maurice is the President and Executive Director of the National Veterans Transitioning Services Incorporated and Reboot, a nonprofit organization that he founded. Welcome, Maurice.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here, Kajal. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So Maurice, as the listeners will get to know what we're here for, and we're really here to tell the veteran story. As we get into this, I really want to ask you about your story and how you got to where you are today, and maybe a little bit about Reboot and the things that you're currently doing.
That's a whole lot to pack in there, so I'll try to accommodate there. So, my story is like so many other veterans' story. I joined the Navy in 1973, went to boot camp. After boot camp, I went to Navy Hospital Corps School in Great Lakes, Illinois, learned how, the tools of the trade to be a Navy corpsman. Ended up in my first duty station, which was in Newport, Rhode Island. I'm from Chicago to Newport, Rhode Island. And then from there, I just had a really great military career, multiple duty stations in multiple parts of the country and across the world. I've learned the culture, how the system works, really had a great time. It was a very, very unique experience. But I would say this, when I first went in, and this is the common story for all of us, I really didn't know what I wanted out of life. I didn't know what I wanted to do it myself. I was looking for me, looking for a direction, and joining the Navy instantly gave me that. It gave me an identity. It gave me a mission, and it gave me a career just like that in that succession. And I was off to the races. There were ups and downs, but I enjoyed every year, every minute of being in the military, because every lesson, whether it's good or bad, is a lesson to be learned from. But then, like everybody, the day came for me to leave, take off that uniform. And I was scared as you know what, because I really didn't have a clear vision of what I wanted to do post-military. I'd lived in this ecosystem for 25, almost 26 years. That's all I knew. That's the world that I understood. I knew how things worked. I had that figured out, but I didn't have me figured out in terms of my identity, taking off the uniform. And I surely didn't have the whole career thing figured out when I got out. And so I basically, instead of following all of the training that I had, I was a hospital corpsman with a bachelor's degree in business and a master's in telecommunications systems management. So I could have gone to work for any number of corporations. Instead, I went to work for a community-based nonprofit because, again, what they were offering, which wasn't a lot of money, they were just offering a chance to help people. And that's where I had ultimately evolved to, which is I wanted to give back and I wanted to do something. It wasn't so much about, hey, I want to make all this money. I was basically in the service mode. And so that journey took me through a lot of more lessons, some painful lessons. It took roughly about 10 years for me after getting out to finally figure out what it is I want to do. And that's when I started Reboot in 2010. And we haven't looked back since then. So I'll end the story there to give you a chance to ask some more questions. But it took me roughly 10 years after retiring to really figure out what it is I really want to do. And I hear that story over and over from a lot of people getting out, not really knowing what they want to do, but really understanding that they don't want to do the same thing on the outside that they did while they were serving, but they couldn't tell you what it is they want to do. And so a lot of people are in search of
Yeah, absolutely. I think that your story probably resonates with a lot of veterans who are either transitioning now or they've transitioned out and they're still trying to find their path. So, what do you see across the country, like through your work and through Reboot? Are there lots of other additional common scenarios and common issues that you're seeing?
Well, I've seen them all. We've been doing reboots since 2010. It's now 2021. And so within this 10 and a half year span, we've worked with thousands of transitioning service members, obviously thousands, different stories, a lot of commonalities and similarities. But I think the biggest thing that we all seem to have in common is the fear of not knowing, the fear of the unknown, not really being comfortable in our skin and knowing how the way things work. We obviously, and again, with a lot of those different stories, and again, it depends on, did you have combat, yes or no? And so your experiences in the military kind of sort of set you up for your journey as you get out. Did you have a pleasant experience while you were in? Was it traumatic for you in terms of adaptability within the military? So again, everybody's story has a slight different spin on it, but I like to always stick with the things that we all have in common, which is when we're getting out, it's the fear, it's not knowing, it's second guessing. We call it the cognitive dissonance, where things inside my head don't look the same on the outside. And I just haven't figured out how to apply myself. And I'll give you one interesting thing that we discovered in Reboot, especially working with women veterans, as we went through the workshop, and everyone discovers their new identity, everyone discovers their own personal passion, their self-mission. Everyone ultimately begins to figure out what it is they want to do. That's how Reboot is structured. But there's so much more that people begin to become aware of. And one thing I heard from the women veterans, service members that were in the workshop, when we asked, so what did you get out of the workshop? We've heard so many times women say, I got my femininity back. Well, in my thinking, as a guy, I was like, I didn't even know you lost it. And so there's so many things that are going on that a lot of us aren't aware of that are happening to veterans that really, kind of, for me, it reinforces why we're doing Reboot, which is to help them overcome that, to help them find themselves, help them redefine that purpose and that mission, and then get on with their life. Because that's what we all deserve, is that chance to really not only serve our country, but to get on with our life by getting some clarity.
Looking for your next mission in tech? Take our Find Your Next Mission quiz. We match your interest and affinities with our knowledge of the tech sector to identify which tech career is the right fit for you. So maybe you should go into something like cybersecurity, or maybe you're more likely to enjoy the business intelligence field, or even software development. Wherever your tech interests lie, go to ccsla.com/vets to take the personalized quiz and start finding your next mission today. And as far as anything in Reboot, anything that, during the time that people are in Reboot, what kind of approaches do you take? Somebody's coming out of the service and they're very much scared, and they may not say it out loud. How do you break down those barriers?
Well, that's exactly how Reboot was engineered. And so I say to anyone watching this video, you will be very pleased with Reboot, because our approach really is all about you. And I'll give you an example. So the curriculum is totally science-based. And so it's something that has been developed by a world-class international organization called the Pacific Institute, used in different countries. So the curriculum is rock solid in terms of the science. But what makes it even more unique is our approach, which is we don't just immerse you into things. As soon as you walk in the door, we're hammering you with this and hammering you with that. The first thing we do is find out, how are you doing? Where are you at? Where is your head at? So the approach is to make it very veteran-centric and about you. It's about how you're feeling. We're not there for our facilitators to hear themselves talk. We introduce the topic, but we really want to find out what's on your mind, what are you feeling, what's in your head, what's in your heart, and then how do we help you get past that? Because really the only person who can get past an issue is the individual. We can guide them and show them and help them, but the individual has to take that first step. They have to walk the path through the next journey. And so our approach is very basic and practical, keeping it real, very personal. It's the cone of silence is there. It's a very trustful, respectful environment because we know where everybody is at. We know how you're feeling because we've been there. And so we take you through a process of let's overcome obstacles. The first obstacle, let's get past the apprehension. Let's get past your fears. Let's get past the issues that are bothering you. And so once we're able to begin to move all of those issues out of the way, then we're able to begin to move forward. So our approach is really help that person, get to the next level and then the next level. It's interesting how the typical workshop progresses. We can almost tell by about the third or fourth day that everybody gets it. It becomes one of those epiphanies where light bulbs begin to come on. That cycle of thinking that a person was in, that self-talk gets changed all of a sudden, and the person gets it. The light bulb comes on, they make several realizations, and then all of a sudden they're now hungry for more. So a person may come in, with apprehension and fear, but within a few days, they're on fire, okay? Because they have been able to put the fear off to the side. I mean, that's the first thing we do. We knock that fear out.
Yeah, I think breaking down those barriers, creating a safe space, saying that, hey, we're all in this together. You have your story, you have your journey. I have a little sticky note on my desk, actually, and it says, change happens at the speed of sense making. And it's by Bill Jensen. He's one of our instructors for change management. And I have it right here, actually, on a sticky note, because if it doesn't make sense, you can't change behaviors. You can't change the way that you choose your identity or going to the next chapter of your life or a career or for something monumental as far as transitioning out. And so if it doesn't make sense, it's not going to click there. So, I'm sure in Reboot and for the practices that you have, the speed is right there. And when that change happens and that light bulb comes on, they're on fire. They're ready to go. They're understanding what they're doing and their next step in life.
Absolutely. You can't force anybody to do anything. They have to want to do it. And that's the beauty of Reboot, is that we don't force anybody or tell anybody to do anything. What we do is just open their eyes. We basically call that, we help widen your reticular activating system. And so they learn a lot of phrases in the workshop, and they learn a lot about themselves, about their mind, about how the brain and the mind works. They learn about self-talk. They learn about their conscious and subconscious. They learn about the inner conversations. And then all of a sudden, to your point, with that awareness comes the willingness to change a learned perception, because that's how we perceive with things that, if this is my perception, then that's my reality. And once it's my reality, then that's how I'm going to operate. And we even get into what we call the conscious mind and the subconscious mind and the roles that each one plays, where there's a thing called the creative subconscious mind, whose function is to make you act and believe the things that you think you are. So if your self-image is, this is who I say I am, well, you'll continue to do that until something inside you says, but you're no longer that. And that has to come from the inside. So no one on the outside can tell you this is who you are. You have to accept it, adapt it, and say, okay, this is who I am. And then as soon as you say, this is who I am, automatically your creative subconscious starts to function the way it's supposed to function, which is, okay, now that you say that's who you are, then I'm going to make sure that you start acting the way you say you are. Some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, really good stuff. And to really follow up on that, I know we've talked in the past, and and I'm in the tech sector, so I always think about how we can sometimes relate this to how computers operate, the way that our brain functions. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I know you brought that up in the past, and I think our listeners would love to learn more about it.
Yeah, no, that's a fascinating topic. There's a book out called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, and that's one of our essential readings. And in his book, which is roughly a 1950s like book, Maxwell Maltz, who was a plastic surgeon, not a psychologist, so it's kind of interesting, basically identified the brain and our thought process like a cybernetic organism, which is basically your brain and your behaviors can be programmed just like a computer. And he goes out to prove that in his book. And there's so much literature and research out there that essentially says, yeah, once you get the programming in you, you will continue to run that program, that loop, until something changes the program, until you have a replacement operating system. A replacement operating system could be a culture. So, we akin culture to your operating system, which is your series of beliefs and behaviors and things of that nature. When you're a civilian prior to the military, you have a certain operating system or cultural belief that you operate off of. That's really your Windows operating system or your Mac operating system that won't work on the inside the military. So there's this thing called boot camp where you go through this reprogramming scenario. The neurons in your brain is rewritten. You're engaging in all kinds of things. We call it neuro-linguistic programming. Who you are as a civilian won't be the same as who you are when you graduate from boot camp. You're automatically reprogrammed. And so just like a programmer, you go through the boot camp program, and then you graduate. In the graduation day, like anything else, is almost like the upload and reset. You know how you upload your operating system, and then after all the programming code has been operated, the system says, okay, now in order for this to take effect, once you shut your computer down and reboot. And so once you reboot, you'll reboot into the new operating system with the new behaviors and the new functions and all that. Going through the military, you get the programming, and then one day you decide to get out. Rarely does anyone go through a reprogramming scenario. So when we came up with Reboot, which is reverse boot camp, as we re-engineered that, we looked at that and said, well, this is so much like rebooting the computers, that you come through Reboot for 3 weeks. And there's a reason why Reboot takes 3 weeks, because it takes scientifically 3 weeks to form a behavior or habit. Okay, that's how long it takes the system to really become a routine. And so Reboot's 21 days long. After those 3 weeks, the individual finishes the workshop, and there's a graduation. And so there's that a big moment. And then the next day, the person reboots under the new operating system, and they're moving on with their life.
Yeah, I love that analogy. I think it speaks well to me and it speaks well to individuals who are looking at tech. And we're in this digital economy now. So I think it resonates to anybody that is at least online, and whether they're in tech or not, it speaks so clearly. Maurice, what does it mean about the title Your Next Mission? And what would you say is really all this podcast is all about?
Well, your next mission is key. And so the question, when you say your next mission, you ask the veteran, well, whose mission are you on today? And so we know that when you're in the uniform, you're on the military's mission. That's what boot camp is basically all about, which is really getting you on that same page. We call it internal and external motivators, things that drives you. So in the military, we're driven by what we call the external locus of control. So the external locus of control really is the military that says, okay, this is your mission. It drives your motivation, everything that you do. It's an energy force that lives within all of us that really keeps us on point. However, when you leave the military, this is one of the struggles that a lot of people have. And I often ask the question, so, hey, you getting ready to get out? Yeah, I'm getting out real soon. Are you excited? Yes, I am. What's your next mission? And people just get quiet, like, get a job. And I just kind of look at, really? Is that it? Yeah, what happens if you don't get a job? Oh, and I'm going somewhere with that, which is, well, okay, then if you don't have a mission, if you don't have a purpose that drives you every day, then why do you get up in the morning? Why do you dress? Why do you do anything if you don't have a mission? In fact, I think I mentioned to you on another call that inside of our brain, there's this part of us that has a need for the next mission or the next focus, the next goal. The way we're programmed by the creator is that we have this feature that says that we're teleological. And what teleological means is that we're goal seekers, and that in order for my brain to function, for me to function, I got to have a goal / mission. So in the military, your goal really is the mission of the military. But when you walk out, you got to come up with your own mission. Now it's personal. It goes from external locus control to internal locus of control, which is what's your mission in life? And so I always like to walk up to people and ask them, what's your next mission? Okay. And if you can't answer that, then it'll tell you why you're exactly in the position that you're in, because all of your systems that are built into your mind, your brain, your function, all center around that person having a mission. So the title, Your Next Mission, is so appropriate here because it's sort of like your navigation system, your control system says, once you get set on that, and it's miraculous how the brain works. I mean, that's a whole nother series, but everything centers around having a mission or a goal. And I tell people, you could call it a mission, you can call it a goal, or you can call it a vision, but you got to have one of those three. Your brain needs that in order for you to function normally.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What are we going to do during this podcast to kind of help individuals who are listening to maybe even think about what their next mission is, or even if they think about what their next vision is or their goal, what are we going to do on this podcast for that?
So the first thing that I want to do is make sure that whenever possible, as many people as possible enroll in the Reboot Workshop so they can get the full force and the full effect of the workshop. That's the best thing that anyone can do. Now, if they don't have time, which there are going to be some people who just don't have time, over the next few podcasts, we'll probably introduce you to some of the different units. And so there'll be a reason for you to start this one and come back for the next one and the next one and the next one. We'll ultimately go through the entire Reboot 3-week curriculum, which is roughly somewhere around about 60 or 70 units that ultimately make up everything. And it's better if you get it in 3 weeks, because then it really makes sense because you're able to connect all the dots. But over time, you can still get it because you can always come back to the podcast, play it again. Now, what was that concept that they were talking about on how the brain functions? They were talking about being teleological, or they were talking about managing my reticular activating. So we'll teach you how to overcome the most challenging obstacle, which is your inner self, your inner talk, your self-talk. The one person who always gets in my way is me. And we'll show you how to get out of your own way to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're going to tell stories too. During this podcast, it's not just Maurice and I chatting away. We're going to bring transitioning vets who either have gone through Reboot or in Reboot or thinking about Reboot, and really hear about their stories. We're going to learn from them to give the listeners here some voices and some recognition, right? We all have our own story, but during this time, you might find some relatability in the stories that we're going to tell and learn something new.
Yeah, I would say stories are powerful because they take that experience and really create it in a very visual kind of sense. We'll hear people's different stories. We'll do some exercises because sometimes, you got to see things to believe things. If I say something, well, this is how that works. It's one thing for me to say it, but you want to do it yourself. So we'll show you some exercises that will prove exactly what we're saying that's going on inside your brain. And so in this podcast, you're going to learn how. Okay, we're going to help you figure out how to find you, how to find your identity, how to identify what we call your career DNA, how to feel comfortable or be comfortable in your own skin. And so these are a lot of the things that people, specifically veterans, yearn for, which is, hey, I just want my next mission. I just want to get on with my life. I just want to be able to manage my thoughts and all that. We're going to expose you to think tanks, other events and activities. We're going to introduce you to some really cool apps that we have out there that are just mind-blowing, changing how business is done out there. We're going to give you all of the answers that you've been looking for when you took that uniform off. You were looking at your journey from military to civilian life. We're going to provide you with all those answers.
Perfect. Yeah, we've got some good stuff, on future episodes. So definitely tune in. So I want to just change it up a little bit and really talk about, we recognize as a global IT company that there is a vast amount of talent that is really readily available in those who are transitioning from the armed forces. You know, at CCS, we use our 23 years of technical and training expertise to help IT talent be up to date and relevant in the workplace. So, Maurice, any thoughts on why transitioning veterans would be interested in working in the digital economy and working in the IT sector from what you know from listening to veterans?
Wow, that's a whole nother hour. well, the answer is, it's a very simple one. We live in a digital economy. There's another piece that I did a couple of weeks ago. It's called The Future of Work. And the future of work is changing right in front of your eyes. And so it behooves all of us to understand technology, to master technology, to integrate technology into our life. There are intrinsic reasons, there are extrinsic reasons why we all want to get into technology. Obviously, there's going to be a shift to artificial intelligence and automation. You got this new renaissance, this wave hitting with EVs, where it's going to change everything. Programming, the world of robotics is kicking in like you would not believe. Programming, the list and the reasons are infinite. And the world is changing, and we are living in a more advanced technological society. And so when it comes to earning a livable wage and beyond, well, there are going to be limited fields that you could get into where technology is going to be a natural. So if you're going to live in the future, which all of us are, then you really need to start looking at technology and defining how are you going to play in that role. There's really no way to get around it. We all have smartphones, and how smart is your smartphone today than it was, let's say, 10 years ago? Probably, incredibly smart. In some cases, you may need a degree to actually use your smartphone 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So the reasons are just totally infinite why you should embrace technology, learn new technologies, and figure out where you fit. And that's what we're going to help you do. We're going to help you figure out where you fit, and then we're going to help you plot out pathways to actually get there. And so you're going to find everything that you need right here at this podcast.
So, Maurice, in every episode, we are going to ask 3 hot questions to our guests. And so today I want to do the same and really put you on the spot a little bit. So are you open to that?
Sure. Okay.
All right. Sounds good. So I want to ask you, and especially when it pertains to the things that you're doing with Reboot and working with veterans, is what's your biggest fear?
That's a really interpersonal question. Rarely do I put something like this out, but my biggest fear is that I won't be able to reach everybody. That's my biggest fear. We have something that works, has been working for 11 years. We've changed lives. We've saved marriages. We've helped people redefine their identity, their purpose, their passion. And so for me, my mission, again, as I mentioned earlier, my mission is to ensure that every single veteran and their family, every service-connected person out there who wants to go through the workshop goes through the workshop. That's what keeps me up at night, worrying about other people.
Yeah, not reaching to as many people as you can possibly do. And I know you and I have talked about this before, especially because of the pandemic and the things that you've had to even change with even Reboot. You had mentioned to me that you've gone online and you're able to really cast the wider net and reach to somebody on the East Coast and on the West Coast at the same time. That's a good fear to have because there's, I think, 200,000 veterans come out.
250,000 per year exit the military. If there's a good side of the COVID-19 pandemic, the good side is that it really got us to think outside the box of how we could make Reboot available digital. And so we have people enrolled in Hawaii, people in Japan, people in Guam. It really, for us, has been a revelation because it's given us the ability to go beyond any classroom, because we have done it in multiple states. Can you imagine how costly that is to bring resources and people and try to rent a space and all of that and do it live, even though that's the best thing. But now that we can do this digitally, we can now reach more people. So I'm feeling a little bit better, but I'm not happy yet because we still have 21 million people that we need to reboot.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, second question. What is your biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge has always been getting others to get it. When I say getting others to get it, I mean federal organizations, governmental organizations, even other nonprofits. You would think that is such a logical, simple thing. You just need to reboot people. Okay, that's it. But the challenge has been getting everyone on that to recognize that as it's that simple. It's not complicated. It's very simple. But a lot of people are supplanted with other ideas that, veterans need a job before they need a reboot. And, as try as I may, I've not been able to convince them that, no, this is kind of like a stackable learning thing. You got to start with A, then you go with B, then you go with C, because we've always seen how this thing plays out, that if you jump straight to the jobs piece and the person still hasn't figured out their identity and their purpose and passion, in many cases, they'll come right back and be where they are today versus, okay, let's all get on the same page. And so my biggest challenge is getting everybody on the same page. If I could snap my fingers and wave a magic wand and say, folks, let's do this. Let's end homelessness. Let's minimize all of the issues that we see facing by taking this one simple step. Wow. We could do it, but that is a challenge right now. I mean, slowly but surely, I've had a good 2 weeks where some major groups and organizations, they finally got it. One group told me, they said, "Wow, after 11 years, I know you've been telling me this for 11 years. I got it now." And so, so it's a challenge, but I'm up for the challenge.
Yeah, great. So, what's your next mission?
My next mission, is a series of activities. Is to simplify this process as much as possible, to replicate this internationally. I just started working with an intern from Russia. And so she and I just talked yesterday, and they're looking at how they're approaching transition. So you got not just the US military, you got other international militaries that have the same problems that we have. And so she and I were having a really good discussion. She's asked me a lot of the same questions you're asking. Well, what are you guys doing? How are you doing it? And now we've come to the question of how can we get this over here in Georgia? How can we get it, in other nations and all that? And so that's going to be another one of my next missions. Once we get the United States taken care of, then I want to take Reboot internationally to other countries.
Wow, that's incredible. You got a lot on your plate.
Yeah,
hopefully you've got some great people, great teams.
Big mission
to carry that load. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Maurice, that really concludes our first episode of Your Next Mission. I want to thank you for your time and insight today. I want to thank all of our listeners out there and giving us your time today. This is our first one, so we've got a lot more content, a lot more great things. This is not the last time that you'll hear from Maurice. He's got a lot of wisdom, a lot of insight, a lot of guidance. So stay tuned for our next episodes. We'll be bringing in some veterans to tell their story and give you some guidance as well. If you want more information about Reboot and CCS Learning Academy and CCS Global Tech, go to ccsla.com/vets. And there you will actually take a tech test to see your potential for a technology career or the next career path that you may want to take. It's a great test to kind of gauge where you are. Go ahead and check us out a little bit more, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Maurice.
Thank you.